How's it going, everyone? I'm gonna give you guys a tip on one of my favorite techniques, and that is flipping and pitching. I may be known as an offshore guy, but grew up fishing shallow, heavy, nasty cover my entire life. And one thing that's super important is selecting the right line for the heavy cover that you're around. And I base that off of hard cover versus soft cover. So when we talk soft cover, I'm going to throw braided line, something like a Seaguar Smackdown in the stealth gray, and I'm gonna either be flipping that in 50 or 65 pound test. Now the reason for that is it's gonna have low stretch, essentially no stretch at all, right? So you get those good hard impact hook sets to drive those fish out of the soft cover. And when I say soft cover, I'm talking heavy mats, vegetation, lily pads, things like that. That type of soft cover. And the other thing that helps is not just the stretch, but the low diameter to strength ratio. So 50 and 65 pound test is a very small diameter, and that low stretch and small diameter helps cut through that cover. So when you set the hook on a fish and that giant's sliding across there sideways, it's just gonna pop those lily pads, beep, 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 or it's gonna cut right through that grass. And that is a huge advantage with having braid over, say, a fluoro or a monofilament. But, and I emphasize, but when we are around hard cover, I prefer fluorocarbon. And that can be either rocks, like you see behind us, you know, big chunky riprap, if I'm flipping around that. It can be laydowns, it could be buckbrush, willow trees, things like that. And the reason for that is because, especially let's talk brush at first. If you have braided line and you set the hook on a fish and it gets wrapped up around the brush, it cinches and locks down on that wood. You know, even on lay down trees and stuff like that, if it's sliding down, that smaller diameter, it's easier to slide in there, and you don't have that stretch and that spring effect that you do with fluorocarbon. Now, fluorocarbon has a lot less stretch than monofilament if that's what you're used to throwing, so we still have that good impact, right? That low stretch gives us that good hook set, but it has more stretch than braid in the fact that it allows us to have that rubber band effect. So a lot of times if you've got to bring them up over, lay down over that cover, it's going to help with that. You just hold that fish tight and allow the line to pop them up and over the cover. A lot of times when you get around rocks, especially up north, you have to deal with zebra mussels and things like that that wreak havoc on your line. And although braid is the strongest that you can get per diameter, those zebra mussels, if they do cut it around that hard cover, it's not as strong, or it doesn't have that stretch to absorb those nicks in your line. So although it doesn't happen often, when I'm fishing for money, I do take the extra precaution, throwing a 20 or a 25 pound Seaguar Tatsu, and that's going to help absorb that shock and absorb those little nicks in the line. And that's why I like to throw it around hard cover. So make sure that when you guys are doing your flipping, pitching, identify the cover you're gonna fish around, and then apply the right Seaguar line for that situation. You have less heartache, more smiles, and more photos for your social media.